And slot methods are good and bad at the same time. The good is because you can go faster, and it's technically what I'm doing with any of my apps. I'm creating components that are reusable, and I can just swap through my components that are using the central card component. Though, if you're using the slot method for a model or for something different, sometimes, if you have a slot that has been defined in a very specific way and you swap it with something else, it doesn't resize properly. And you have your slot that is just a teeny tiny thing that cannot be expanded. And even if you change the properties, it doesn't expand properly. I don't really like that, but I like slots for the ease of use. Technically speaking, you've seen that in the past. This is a slot-based layout. You have your type, and I can be in video type, I can be in music type, I can be in dashboard type, whatever. If I'm in dashboard type, my main content, music, is probably going to be something different than that. So in order to swap this, I just need to select it and then go into my main component section, go into main content. That's music. I need settings, and that's a slot layout. You're going to use dashboard. I'm going to use this one, which we already have, main content video, and then the last one is settings. I think this one could be used as well, but it's weird. This is basically like a slot-based behavior. And so if I'm here and I'm getting my main card in settings, or my main card in dashboard, or my main card in like main content. So this is technically a slot. And then once I have that is defined, I can have my sub-level variations, and it's a slot-based things. Though, as I said, this is not slot-based as reshaped would slot-based things. It sounds so weird. For those of you who don't know what slot-based layout means, technically you have an element that can be replaced, and you have multiple versions of the same replaceable element. So you have column-based slots, you have row-based slots that exist. And so that means that when you are in your main content, your main component, they have slots that exist. For example, this one, the tab bar or the navigation bar, the main component is just one slot, and I can technically take that specific, I said slot way too much, slot component and replace it with something different, meaning that in my options when I'm there, I should have the ability to take said slot, replace it with another slot, or swap it with something specific. That's the idea. So it's pretty simple, it's pretty useful, but it's just sometimes it has issues. That's why I don't use them so often, but it's useful. In order to get the content to resize properly based on your main frame component, you need to make sure that the constraint of that slot are defined in the slot main component and in the main component that you are using the slots in. It's complicated to wrap your head around the fact that the place where the main component of the slot is defined need to have the exact same potential constraint as the main component in which the slot is going to be used. So even saying that is complicated, so understanding that is not going to be as easy as it sounds. That's the first thing. And then once that makes sense to you in 15 days, it's going to be hard to ensure that you don't by mistake change the constraint or the auto layout constraint of a frame by changing the parent frame behavior without really paying attention, because that happens often in auto layout frames. If you have like a parent frame that is set to hug, and then you change your child frame into fill, then the parent frame is switching from hug to fixed, and that fucks up the entire slot behavior. That's complicated. The main reason, or the main thing that I would recommend you to use instead, is the thing that I've been doing. Obviously, I'm gonna recommend my methods because that makes sense to me. If you get your layout structure as a main component, and we talked about that in the past, so you get like a main component like this, and then that main component, basically the only constraint that it has is ensuring that the entirety of the content inside resize in a proper manner so that you can just change content. That's good. And then from here, you can define my main card is going to be my main content for music. And so what happens if I'm resizing the content? Everything resizes properly based on my constraints that I have defined on my main card content. The main thing is you define an empty empty layout-based component. And then the only thing that you need to do is define the slots that are going to be inside. So for me, I have my main card with media, main card with the dashboard, main card with the settings, and the main card with the musics. And that's about it. And then I can just swap things from that easily. So I have a swap component from main card that give me the ability to swap between the 4 options that I have. And then from there, I am taking the main card sub properties into my main component. So if I'm here and I'm saying, okay, so that's my main card thing, I need that for the human behavior. Cool. Now I have the human preview. I can expand it so that I can see a bit more of the content if needed. Or maybe it's not the human that I need the user thing. Cool. Now I can check that. Good. Whatever. It's pretty easy overall. Makes things faster. So that would be my recommendation to you, to create slots that are specifically defined for the place where you need to use them. If you use them in a model, for example, that's going to be a bit more complicated. It's the same behavior in a way. Slot, 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 slot. Slot, 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 slots, slots, slot, 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 slots, slots,